right, welcome to City Council this evening. Many familiar faces. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Can we start with the roll call and the pledge?
Mayor Bagley.
Here.
Council members Christensen. Here. Finley. Here. Martin. Here. Peck. Rodriguez. Here. And Waters. Here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
You did that so well. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, just a quick reminder, it's a study session, so we have a first call public invited to be heard list. If you're not on this list, this is your one and only chance to be heard tonight, so if you'd like to actually say something, come on up over the next couple of minutes and talk to Lucianne here on the end, and we'll get your name on here. Anybody want to come up and get their name on it that's not on it already? All right. All right, motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas. Anybody have anything really pressing to add to a future agenda? All right, my screen went dark, but I didn't see anybody. All right, so let's go ahead and start with public invited to be heard. You've got 3 minutes. If you can come up, say your name and address, or not, and say what you have to say. Mr. Michael Baca. Could you turn on that mic? And then Sandy, could you fix this?
Mic check, mic check. Hello everyone, my name is Michael Baca from 1400 Brookfield Drive. I'd like to start off by thanking Mayor Bagley, the City Council, and the rest of the community who's come out tonight. I come to speak on behalf of Liberty, as I have done so in the past. We find ourselves once again on the topic of firearms. In the past, I have clarified the founders' beliefs and reasoning behind the right to keep and bear arms, as well as the individual responsibility of our elected officials to defend said liberty. Tonight, I wish to add my own thoughts and perspectives into the conversation. I'd like to consider myself a good man. I work long, hard hours of manual and mental labor. I wish to see everyone in our community prosper and grow. I'm the type of individual that will stop and help a fellow citizen change their tire or offer a ride to the elderly carrying groceries down the street. I also happen to be the type of individual that would lay my life, freedom, and finances on the line to defend you should the need arise. I carry a firearm, as do many other individuals throughout their daily life. I stand behind you at the grocery store in line. I get up and go to work just like the rest of you. I strive every day to be the best man I can be, and I carry. I do this not to harm others, but to protect myself and the rest of our community. Should an individual bring risk of physical harm to myself or another, I am ready and willing to act in a moment's notice to prevent such an action. I do this because it makes our community a safer place for my friends, my family, and everyone else. Acting in such a way may bring legal case against me, resulting in financial difficulties and a risk to my freedom. But I view it as my duty as an American. The police cannot be everywhere at once, and sadly, they often arrive after the damage has been dealt. This is, of course, no fault of their own. But when someone tries to inflict serious bodily harm on you or a loved one, you want to have a good guy with a gun there. You want to have me or one of the many other patriots in this community there. I know many people of opposing viewpoints are currently strongly against our current administration. To be frank, I am as well. This is but another reason why we must keep our firearms. We must not allow power to be consolidated into the government in such a way that it leaves the people unable to resist the tyrannical system. We have seen throughout history the damage a government can do when unchecked. We must not allow the illusion of safety to strip us our freedom and our ability to resist harm. I'd hope the mass civil disobedience displayed in Boulder and across the country in the face of tyrannical gun laws will discourage such actions being passed here. I am a good man, and I do not wish to be turned into a criminal when given the choice to choose between my liberty with firearms or tyranny with no means to defend myself. We, the people, will not comply with attempts to strip this freedom from us. So please, allow me to continue to strive to be the best man I can be. Please allow me to continue to look out for my friends, my family, and my community. And finally, please do not turn me and many of thousands of others into criminals simply for demanding that the right to defend ourselves stays within our hands. Thank you all again.
Thank you, Mr. Baca. Lance Psycho.
Good evening, Council. I'm here tonight not to complain, but instead to commend the Longmont City Council on their efforts over the past 10 months in fostering an open dialogue between citizens as it pertains to gun control and preserving our constitutionally protected natural rights of self-defense. I would like to thank Council Waters in particular in reaching out to the spiritual leaders of our community to host a first of its kind gun violence and gun rights conversation. I and many others attended this meeting last September and felt it was very productive in letting out steam on both sides of such an overheated and complicated issue. I would also like to thank the entire City Council for voting to double our school resource officers in the district only 2 months after our community discussion. I've personally met with the principals of each of my children's schools one-on-one and have been thoroughly impressed with the attention to security, but more importantly, to the mental health of our children. You're miles ahead of the People's Republic next door, who instead have decided to go down the opposite path and make their citizens criminals. I'm also here to listen and learn about the findings of the report from the previously mentioned gun violence and gun rights community conversation. Stephen Kukik, a facilitator of the September Safety and Respect Cafe, was quoted with the following statement yesterday in the Times Call. Longmont is fortunate that among its residents are leaders in local faith communities who understand that reducing the risks of gun violence without erosion of constitutional rights requires listening and respecting and learning before acting. Stephen is right. However, I am curious to know more about what the basis of the next community session, slated for February 27th, will be about, in particular to the phrase he used, that is, toward action plans. We've seen plenty of reactive legislation around this subject that doesn't make our community safer, nor does it respect the rights of others. What further action could we take in our community that makes it safer while respecting the rights of others? Should we follow the legislative lead of New York, California, or Boulder? Or should Longmont lead the way? I would encourage you all and this entire community to not be like New York, California, or Boulder. Be Longmont strong, independent, and unique. We're better than the People's Republic. Let's keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Psycho. Rod Brandenburg, AKA Grandpa.
Grandpa's Pawn and Gun, 25 years in April, folks. So we'll probably see a splash in the paper about that. Have been talking the last 5 months to several principals, parents, school administrators. I presented to City Council many months ago that parental patrols at our schools. And the City Council is truly interested, and Longmont's interested in providing a safer environment. It doesn't cost the taxpayer a nickel. Just get parents involved. Because I'll have you all think back to when you were in high school. If there were more adults walking around, you're less apt to be screwing around in the halls, or if you really had something stupid to do, you're entertaining bringing a gun into school. If there's more adults watching, it's probably not going to happen. So I was curious in the last 5 months if you all have had discussions with our local school districts. Dan, I know initially he was not interested in having guns in school. I was interested in parents with cell phones patrolling the schools and just have more eyes on the prize. But there are actually programs in Wyoming and Alabama where there are parents in the schools doing exactly what I suggested doing here. Because I would sure as heck hate to see something happen in our schools. And we've been discussing this for 5 months and nothing happened. I bid you adieu. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brandenburg. All right, that concludes our first call, public invited to be heard. Let's move on to special reports and presentations. We invited, actually they were going to come anyway, but we put them on the agenda because that way we have an opportunity to interact. Those from Longmont's Veterans Village have some comments to make. Chad, welcome. Come on up. Sorry, Chris Stout. And who's that with you?
He's not important.
He's not important?
Yeah. No, that's Mark Solomon.
Mark, welcome.
Yeah.
You can stand up there. We think you're important. We don't know who you are, but.
Don't worry about it, yeah. So that's Mark Solomon. He is one of our co-founders, and I guess we'll go ahead and get the introduction out of the way. He is actually the executive director for the Longmont project. So
Very cool.
Go ahead and make that introduction now. So, okay, that's enough. Yep, that's enough. Yep. So Mark is I'll let him do all the talking about himself because he does a lot better of it, and he'll do a significant amount more than I will. I'll go ahead and get out of the way. He's a Coast Guard vet too. So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys. A lot has been going on in the background since the last time I was here. I think this is the first time I've been up here in front of everybody, but we've gotten an anticipated construction schedule and a date to hopefully start moving dirt out here come late summer. So that's super exciting for us. So the ball's moving. So thank you to Harold and his team. That's super, super exciting. So you guys now have your executive director, and we're going to start hiring and getting our service center up and going. And so you'll start seeing a lot of movement out here. So that's what's happening on our end. We were actually at the Veterans Service meeting today in Denver, starting to make connections and start, making our putting our stamp on a lot of stuff going on within the community here and out there as well. So we hired a fundraiser as well today, and a lot of stuff is going on. So that's what's going with us in Veterans Community Project. In Kansas City, so in case you guys don't know, we opened up our second phase of houses, so we're at 26 houses there. So we have 26 veterans living there. We have now served more than 15,000 veterans within our community center there. And yeah, so we're moving fast there. We picked up another city. We're operating in Orlando as well. So that's kind of the short and sweet version. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know Mark is going to gobble up a lot of it. So there's Mark.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for having us and allowing me to come and talk to you briefly. So my name is Mark Solomon. I'm a combat vet, just like Chris and our other founders as well. And I'm still in the Navy, 15 years in so far, almost 15. And I am just really excited about this. One of the things I wanted to mention is the name Veterans Community Project. It means something. It's more than just the name, right? So we service veterans. It's an ongoing project. Community is in the middle for a reason. Okay, it was by design. We could not be doing the things we're doing in Kansas City or here without you all. Okay, the staff as well as the council. It takes a community to make this happen, and we are so excited to be a part of the community. I am going to be your point of contact. So if anybody has any questions or needs anything, again, we are very excited to be here and be a part of this. So again, thank you very much. And this is probably the shortest I'll ever talk. Normally I will talk longer. So
Do you live in Longmont yet?
I don't, sir.
You going to move here?
Yes, sir.
Nice. When?
My wife wants to, and I want to stay married. So yes, it'll happen. Just whatever
Awesome.
schedule she wants to put on it, sir.
Good. That'll be
that's-
awesome.
that's how that'll work.
That'll be. He says, "Sir, Chris." I like this guy. What are you talking about? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Well, we're excited about the project. Your project has actually impacted policy. We make sure that you've got 7 champions up here. So thank you for coming, and we look forward to your wife arriving to our community.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Mr.
all.
Solomon.
Appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
All right, let's move on to the citizens' report to its government on what happened on September 12th, 2018, the Safety and Respect Cafe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I'm Steve Cookick, and I am a resident of Longmont and have been, and my wife and I have been since the year 2000, and we aren't moving, ever. This is a wonderful place. I'm an elder at Central Presbyterian Church, and I'm on the board for a new not-for-profit that is called Recovery Cafe Longmont that you heard a little bit about from Councilman Waters at the open forum that you had recently, and we're very excited to let you know about that we're now located on 4th and Kimbark in the basement of the Central Presbyterian Church, and that's pretty exciting for us to have that going. So once the renovation's done, we'll probably be opening by about April 1st. My purpose tonight is to share with you what has happened and what will be happening related to the event that we had on September 12th at the museum. I was blessed to be the World Cafe host for that evening, and that's why I was asked to present this report to you that you have, and also this PowerPoint. Thanks for putting it up. So you can see by that PowerPoint that there was a safety, and look at the way "and" is spelled in all caps. Safety and Respect Cafe, a community conversation for on reducing the risk of gun violence on September 12th. So let me just kind of run through this PowerPoint with you, and I think you'll understand the who and the what of what has happened and what will be happening. This is the who. Councilman Waters approached Dr. David Barker, who is the pastor at Central Presbyterian Church, with the idea of doing this kind of a community conversation. Dr. Barker provided leadership for the Longmont faith community, who agreed to be the kind of the impetus behind making this happening. The city of Longmont has offered tremendous support for this event, and we appreciated that. 150 community members, including the mayor and several city council members, participated in the event. 20 community members, including 10 city employees, volunteered to be table hosts, and I'll explain what that means here in a minute. Chuki Chan produced a graphic representation of cafe results that I'll share with you in a moment. The Longmont Museum opened its doors for the cafe. The Department of Public Safety provided support. Central Presbyterian provided logistical support. And then we really appreciate the fact that the city staff summarized the data that came from the cafe that you see in the report. So here's a graphic that kind of explains a little bit more about what this strategy is for getting people together, called the World Cafe. It's a really interesting idea that sprung up a few years ago. The idea is to get people sitting around relatively small tables as if they're in a cafe. And if you're in a cafe and you're sitting around a small table, that's where good conversation happens. And that was the idea of this. So we got people together in these smaller groups to be able to discuss a couple of questions and on a basic theme that we set up. And we really made the point, I think, up front that the idea was to have some fun and also to seek first to understand, then to be understood. You know, as I said in the well-reported article that was in the paper this morning, it was very civil, that event. With a lot of strong opinions that people have about all of these issues related to reducing the risk of gun violence. So this was basically the theme then, and I shared with you that it's safety and respect. This model that you see on the bottom of this PowerPoint comes from one of my mentors in my life. I worked for Stephen Covey for a couple of years, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and he had this principle behind all of the habits. And the principle is, the way you see the world determines what you do. It doesn't affect what you do, it determines what you do. And that determines what you get. So think about that for a minute. If you want to get different results, then you not only have to do something different, but you have to see the world differently. Otherwise, you will not do the things that are consistent with what you want to get done. So people who attended that evening had really different opinions about the way they saw the world in regard to safety and respect. There were some who attended who said the only way for this community to be safe is for people to have firearms and for none of that right to be abridged. And then there was another group of people who said the only way for this community to be safe is to really figure out some common sense gun regulation to be able to limit firearms. Otherwise, we won't be safe. And then on the other side of this, the issue of respect, there were people who attended who said, you really don't respect the gun culture, and until you do respect the gun culture, you're never going to be able to get to a solution to any of this. And then there were other people who were there who said, you really don't respect how scared we are because there are so many guns. So you can see with that dichotomy of opinion that it's a little difficult to come to a solution that will get us to a place that provides a community solution to this issue. So these were the questions that we put to the small groups. Number one, what can we do collectively to reduce the risk and respect the rights? And then number two, what can I do individually to reduce the risk and respect rights? So those were the two questions that the small groups grappled with on that evening, and I think very successfully. So this was the way it was set up for the evening. And you can see by the schedule, I won't go through the whole schedule, but you can see that we accomplished what we accomplished in these 2 hours. And we set up sessions for a discussion for 20 minutes, then 15 minutes, then 15 minutes again. And then we came back together again for 30 minutes at the end to share patterns and themes and questions that relate to the 2 questions that we posed. So what happened? We have a great friend whose name is Chuki Chan, who's just a really, really creative person who came up with a graphic representation of what the evening presented. And this is what she came up with. And if you look at this for a little, you can see that there's this issue of safety and respect. You can see that there are issues that are here about their gun laws that are not being enforced, and you can see there's an issue of isolation. There's a big issue right in the middle of the issue of fear on all sides related to this issue. There's an issue of education. What should we do in regard to education? Do the statistics matter in relationship to all of these issues? What is the root cause of this problem is another thing that came forward. What can the community do? Mental health is obviously an issue. We all want to feel safe. We want to reduce violence. We want common ground, is what Chuki heard from that session we had on September 12th. So then we went about the task of producing a report. We had lots of raw data, as Harold knows. So we asked the city staff to help us, and the city staff did help us. And you'll see in an appendix to the report the raw data from that evening. We summarized it and found that these were the 4 themes that came forward from that September 12th World Cafe. Number 1, violence in the culture as a root cause of lethal behavior. That was a theme that came forward that really makes sense, doesn't it? Just think about all the ways that there is an overabundance of violence in our culture and what that means, both verbally as well as physically, right? So another theme that came forward was the issue of mental health. And we really do appreciate the fact that our Department of Public Safety is doing what it's doing, that you as a city council are doing what you're doing to bring some light onto this issue about mental health. We know in our work that we're starting with this Recovery Cafe that, this is a gigantic issue for people who suffer from addiction in regard to what they're facing, obviously. So mental health is a really important theme that came forward that evening. And I want you to remember something about this. I'm not sharing my bias or perspective about this. I'm reporting what happened as a result of this evening. These are the themes that came forward. The third being education. Education of all kinds in regard to gun safety, in regard to this issue of violence in the culture, education that relates to how do you help kids to have the right kind of self-esteem so that they feel more comfortable with themselves and they aren't approaching the world in a fearful way. All of those ways of doing education came forward during that evening. And the fourth issue and theme that came forward is we should come to grips with what do we think the appropriate role is and the responsibility of local, county, state, and federal organizations. What should happen in relationship to our governing bodies at all levels in relationship to this issue? Those were the 4 themes that came forward. So what we decided is that it would be really a good idea to look at what's next. And what's next is an action planning session on these 4 themes. I hope I can answer the question that was asked just a little bit ago. That issue of action planning is just to get people together to think about, as a community, what can we do on those 4 themes as a community? To try to maintain the spirit that we had on September 12th of getting together in a civil way to be able to discuss issues that are just fraught with all kinds of disagreement. This session is scheduled at the Longmont Museum on February 27th at 6:30. There'll be 4 groups, one each for each of the themes that I mentioned just a bit ago. 2 facilitators for each group. 1 facilitator will come from the community and 1 from city staff. so that we'll have good facilitation to be able to have this conversation. And as a at the end of this kind of a session, a report again will be produced offering the Longmont community opportunities to reduce gun violence with safety and with respect. So the idea is to produce a report that will offer the Longmont, I want you to hear that again, the Longmont community opportunities to be able to figure out ways of reducing gun violence with safety and with respect. So that's where we are, and that's where we're going with this, and I'd be happy to take any questions that you have.
Councilmember Finley.
Does the community need to sign up for this February 27th like they did before, and where do they do that?
Yes, that's going to be done on a, as I understand it, on a city site, and that's going to be set up here in the next little bit, is what I was told by one of your council members, who happens to be my city councilman in Fox Hill.
So it'll
that's
be
Tim.
on the
Yeah.
city's website?
It will be. It will be.
Okay. Starting when?
Harold?
I know that they did it last time. I'm not sure all of those issues, but we'll get that out once I can get with the folks that set it
Okay,
up.
if you
We'll
could
get
let
that
me
to-
know,
we'll-
I'd
we'll get that
appreciate
to
it.
council.
Thank you.
Dr. Waters?
Yeah, we got help. Karen, did you line that up or did Sandy? In September?
I think Sandy and
Was it you?
Susan.
Yeah, so we knew how many people to anticipate. The city supported the registration process, so we didn't have more people show up than the facility could accommodate. And it would be nice to be able to do the same thing for the September 27th event.
I've got a question, and that is, it's the one that was echoed by someone previously. What is the purpose, or what is the goal of this next meeting? How is it different than the first?
The first was to get people together to think what they could do, what we could do collectively and what we could do individually. And what came forward were themes that we thought, I thought, as the facilitator, the World Cafe host, needed more attention than just what that first meeting gave us. That first meeting kind of gave us what the themes are, with a little bit of meat on that. But what we wanted to do next was to look at those four themes and come up with opportunities for the community to reduce gun violence with safety and with respect. And so that's the idea of this, is to kind of move toward not identifying what the problem is, but identifying what solutions might be related to those four themes.
Got it. And again, this isn't a government meeting. It's a
Community meeting.
faith-based community meeting. All right, okay. Dr. Waters?
Yeah, I think, first of all, let me start with your last point. This is not a city. The city has supported this. It's not a city function, and it's. I've been asked a number of times since the September event, since I was involved, and my name's associated with that event and the conversation. So I've been asked a number of times, what's next? Are you guys going to do anything? Was that a good use of our time? There were a lot of ideas. If you look at I've looked at the raw data. There are pages and pages and pages of it, and thanks, I will echo Steve's thanks to the volunteers. It was volunteer staff members who volunteered their time to pull all the notes off of the butcher paper. It was on the paper or on the tables of the cafe conversations. There were at that time some expectations that that process isn't a decision-making process, that there would be some opportunity for those who cared about doing more with mental health or mental health resources in the community, a chance for people to come together and identify what they might do together. And frankly, it would be terrific. I don't know where Karen is with that part of the community conversations around homelessness, but if we could merge that opportunity so we don't have multiple groups in a conversation or action planning about how do we do more and better in serving communities with mental health needs, number one. Number two, you heard a few minutes ago, we were asked a question, what have we done about, working with schools? Well, my perspective is that's a question that's better asked to the school board than the city council, since we don't control what happens in schools. That's what the school board does. So I think that question ought to be raised in a proper or a different setting. Not that we don't speak with the school district from time to time, but that's something over which we have no control. But during the cafe, there were many ideas shared about what could be happening in the community, not in schools, not exclusively in schools, in the community. In fact, I think I heard that evening one of the speakers, an individual who spoke that night and spoke tonight, offering to host some of the opportunities for people to get smarter and better at what you do for gun safety. That's part of the education as well. In fact, under that heading, there were lots of ideas about whether you're a gun owner or not. What if you're a parent of kids, you're not a gun owner, but your kids in homes where there are guns? You know, what do your kids need to know if they're in the homes of their friends and their parents are responsible gun owners? What should your kids know about that? There were lots of discussions about the organizations, whether you're a nonprofit, whether you're self-organized, whether you're, you know, we've had groups come, we have groups here tonight, maybe, we certainly have had groups here who identify themselves with different causes or organizations that feel some responsibility to address issues around violence and how violence manifests in our society. And how to do something about that, whether it's regulatory, whether it's resource-based, and at multiple levels, right, from local to federal. And this, I think, is probably intentional. It doesn't say government, it says organizations. So there may be government organizations, but there are certainly lots of other organizations that have roles and responsibilities here. The intent here is for those who want to go from conversation to let's do something together to reduce risks of violence in Longmont, this is a chance to come together for community groups, members of the community to come together, put together an action plan and own it. This is not going to become an action plan for the city. This is an action plan for the individuals who come together and say, I care about this enough to show up. I care enough about this to be part of a solution. And I care enough to assume responsibility. I'm not going to lay it on somebody else. I'm not going to point to the city to take responsibility. I'm not going to point to the school district. I'm going to own it. If it's going to move forward, whoever shows up needs to show up understanding they need to help lead, not just talk and not just point. So happy to answer more questions if you want. Whatever form that action plan or those action plans take are going to have to be owned by the participants, and hopefully we'll get a chance to see what they are if they have any implications for us.
All right, thanks. And then I think City Council deserves to hear this, as well as some of the people this is an important issue for. The way things get on the agenda, right? There's no vast conspiracy either to promote or restrict gun ownership by anyone on this council. Once a week, every Wednesday, I meet with Harold Dominguez after our Tuesday meeting to talk about next week's agenda in an attempt to try to keep it short enough so we finish before 11, and also trying to talk with Harold about just workload, what should come first or last. In this particular case, Harold asked, well, Dr. Kukik, that's Kukik, right? Did I pronounce that right? He would like to present the results of the World Cafe. And my stomach nodded and I wanted to vomit. And I'm like, oh, gal, you know, this again? It's like picking a scab. But regardless, this is something that obviously is important to our community. And so that is why we put it on the agenda tonight. It's a follow-up to our previous conversations. I reached out to a couple council members and thought, well, what do you think? And their immediate reaction was, ugh, it's going to be potentially, you know, an ongoing source of anxiety as a community. But nevertheless, we said we would bring it back. It's community driven, and we should give them time to present their findings. And so thank you, sir, for your presentation tonight. We look forward to whatever comes next. And thank you for picking up the baton and running with this issue.
My
It's
pleasure.
appreciated.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next Longmont Economic Development Partnership 2018 quarterly report to council. I believe it's fourth quarter. And with us is Jessica Erickson, the Executive Director of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership.
Good evening, Mayor Bagley and council members. I am Jessica Erickson, President and CEO of the Longmont Economic Development Partnership. My fourth quarter 2018 report was included in the packet that you received last week. And so for this evening, I just have a handful of slides to highlight some of the results of some of the targets for 2018 and just to ensure clarity in terms of how to interpret some of the information that's presented in that report. And so just a reminder that we focus our work in what we consider our 4 core service areas of Advanced Longmont, which is the overall economic development strategy for the city, as well as specifically within the areas of primary industry, local business, and startup community support. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the work that we've been doing recently related to the Advanced Longmont strategy and our update of that plan into Advanced Longmont 2.0. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we'll be back here in a couple weeks to talk about our progress and provide some more detail regarding the market assessment, industry cluster analysis, and focus area analysis that we've done relative to that strategy, but just wanted to talk a little bit about what we did leading up to the end of last year, or in the last few months of last year, relative to the update of that strategy. So we completed the market assessment, the local economic analysis part of that strategy update, which is what informs what will ultimately be the strategy, goals, and priorities of Advanced Longmont 2.0. We took a little bit different approach to, or we're taking a little bit different approach to Advanced Longmont 2.0 than I think was taken with the original Advanced Longmont strategy that was adopted in 2014. I think we can all agree that we're in a very different economic environment here today in Longmont, in the region, in Colorado, and across the country than what we were in 2014, especially here in Longmont. The original Advanced Longmont strategy focused a lot on growth, which was what we needed to be focused on at the time to get us to where we're at today with the vibrant economy that we have today. But with this market assessment, we wanted to take a more comprehensive and holistic look at how that growth has impacted the overall economy relative to prosperity and inclusion in particular. So how has that growth benefited the community as a whole? How has that, again, top-line growth spread out to prosperity across the entire community? And then specifically looking at inclusion and how what benefits and what challenges we still face, in particular relative to inclusion as it relates to different racial and ethnic diversity within our community. Part of the assessment is also a refinement of, or a relook and refinement of our targeted industry clusters. You'll see some data related to our current targeted industry clusters, or the original Advanced Longmont industry clusters, that suggest that we're not seeing faster growth within, or better growth within those clusters than we are as a whole. And the whole idea behind targeting specific industry clusters is to put our resources towards those industries, or towards attracting and growing those industries that have the highest potential for growth and success in our community. And so once we start to see less of a gap between how fast those industries are growing and how jobs are growing as a whole, we want to look at refining those and reassessing those. And so through that process, we've identified, and again, we'll provide some more detail when we come back in a couple weeks with the overall progress report on the strategy. But we've identified 4 new, and not necessarily new, but refined targeted industry clusters as part of that strategy of smart manufacturing, business catalysts, food and beverage, and knowledge creation and deployment. And then we also looked at the core areas of focus of the original Advanced Longmont strategy, which were business climate, quality of life, infrastructure, entrepreneurship and education, entrepreneurship and innovation, education and workforce development, and marketing. And really looked at the overlaps in those different focus areas and how we could better refine how we're looking at the different strategies and how they impact our economy. So we'll be looking at focus areas of talent, place, industry, connectivity, and impact, again with some more detail to come in the next couple of weeks. Now I'll move forward to, I'll just give a little bit of an update on what the next couple of weeks and couple of months look like for us for the Advanced Longmont 2.0 strategy. We have finished, as I mentioned, the market assessment and targeted industry analysis work. We've been working with focus groups of our Advanced Longmont partners, as well as some other stakeholders in the community, to do some concept generation around goals and strategies in each of those different focus areas. We will be presenting to you to get you all up to speed on where we're at in more detail on February 19th. We will be presenting to our Advanced Longmont partners on February 6th, and then presenting to the larger community at our Economic Summit on February 28th. That is not the end, but just the beginning of the next steps of moving forward with developing the goals and strategies of the Advanced Longmont 2.0 strategy, with the ultimate goal to have that strategy completed by the end of Q1 of 2019 and begin active implementation at the start of Q2 of 2019. From there, I'll move into our primary industry targets from 2018. We set a target in 2018 to attract, relocate, or expand 10 primary industry businesses that will create 500 new, well-paying jobs and invest $50 million in new capital investment. Based on the projects that we worked with, we worked on the attraction, relocation, or expansion, or we successfully attracted, relocated, or expanded 32 businesses that will ultimately create 395 new jobs in the community and invest $8.5 million in capital investment. Clearly, 395 is just shy of our goal of 500. We see this not as an indication of not achieving that target, but just of timing, as we do continue to have an active prospect pipeline of primary industry attraction, relocation, and expansion projects that have the potential to add an additional 2,500 new primary jobs in the city. One of the things that we ran up against on a couple of the projects that we were working on that would have pushed us up over that 500 target was the government shutdown and some of the companies that we're working with that are dependent on government contracts for their growth and expansion plans. Some of those now moving forward since the reopening of the government. The $8.5 million or the shortage on the total capital investment target has really just been a function of most of the projects that we're seeing due to real estate capacity issues are expansions within existing space as opposed to expanding into new space. So there's just a lower capital, less capital intensive types of projects when you're expanding in existing space versus going into new space. We also look at primary industry relative to retention and expansion. We annually work to retain 100% of Longmont's existing primary employers and jobs. Of course, the goal is always 100%. However, market and other forces outside of our control of Longmont EDP, of the city of Longmont, do significantly influence our ability to achieve this goal. In 2018, we do year-end employment surveys with all of our primary industry employers. So these numbers are based on the responses to those, which we have right around a 50% response rate. We also track closures and other activities within our primary industry base throughout the year that impact these numbers too. So as of the first of the year in 2018, we had 238 primary businesses in the city, ended the year with 239. So of those 239 at the end of the year, 222 were retained, so 93.2% retention. We did see the closure, and I'm happy to answer detailed questions about those, closure of 16 and the addition of 7 primary industry businesses. One of the things that I want to point out is that when we talk about the 395 jobs attracted, the 32 businesses attracted or expanded in the current year, we don't count our eggs until they hatch. So those jobs are not necessarily included in these numbers unless they were actually created in the city this year. So a really good example of that is the previous slide. In 2017, 500 Smuckers related jobs would have been included in that. Not a single one of those is included in these numbers to date because until late last year, none of those jobs had actually been created in the city. And actually until early this year, they hadn't actually started onboarding and training those employees. So we'll immediately see the effects of that in Q1 of 2019. And then as it relates to jobs, we started the year with 11,043 primary jobs, again, based on our surveys. At the end of the year, 11,164. 10,576, or 96% of those were retained from the previous year. 467 lost in relation to those closures of 16 businesses, as well as some downsizings, and added 588. So net job growth within our primary industry base of 1% in 2018. Local businesses, our target was to attract, relocate, or expand 10 local businesses that would create 50 new jobs and invest $5 million in new capital investment. We worked with 16 local businesses who ultimately chose to come to or expand within the city of Longmont that will ultimately create 101 new jobs. Again, these are our local businesses, and invest $1.4 million. Again, that shortage in capital investment is related to most of these projects being expansions of existing businesses versus new businesses coming in with capital-intensive projects in new real estate. With our startup community work, we set a target to support the launch of 10 new ventures that will create 20 new jobs. We did actively or directly support the launch of 4 new ventures within the city that will create 23 new jobs. We did also launch the Innovate Longmont program, which is an individualized accelerator program in partnership with the Longmont Community Foundation, Tinkermill, Startup Longmont, and Boulder Small Business Development Center that actively pursues opportunities to support the launch of new businesses within the city of Longmont. So we expect to meet and exceed that target in the future of 10 new ventures or more year over year. And so overall, as of the end of 2018, we saw year-over-year job growth, 275 net new jobs added across all industries, which was 0.5% job growth and totaling 55,434 jobs, again, across all industries within the city of Longmont. One thing that we want to make sure to make clear is that assessing overall economic vitality and health on a year-over-year basis is not always an indicator of overall economic health. So for example, in 2017, 2018, we saw a lot of merger and acquisition activity within one of our strongest industries, which is the storage industry. And so that had short-term negative net effects on job growth within the city over a couple of years, but will have long-term positive net effects. So what that means is we had a strong presence of all of the companies within that industry that were both bought and sold. And so as there were consolidations, eliminations of redundancies, that significantly impacted that industry and jobs within that industry. Now that those companies have been right-sized within the community and globally, we're starting to see job growth come back within those industries with the acquiring companies that remain. So we typically will look at job growth over 5-year periods and watch for any kind of anomalies within that, but then also watch for multi-year trends versus just simply year-over-year growth. So 5-year job growth, we've seen 5,345 net new jobs added within the city of Longmont, which is 10.7% job growth over 5 years. So relatively speaking, the national average has been 7.4% over the 5 years. So well ahead of the national average in terms of job growth. The very teeny tiny little chart that you have up there, I apologize for that. We'll improve that in the future. It looked really big on my computer screen. You'll see our targeted industries. So these are the targeted industries that were in the original Advanced Longmont strategy of advanced technology, bioscience, creative arts, and professional services, reflecting just over, or it looks like close to 8% year over year, or 5-year job growth across those industries. So again, we look to have where we're putting our resources in terms of targeting industries, that growth to outpace overall job growth. So now that we're seeing that that's not happening anymore, again, is why with the Advanced Longmont 2.0 strategy, we're looking at refining and really focusing and targeting on those industries. Some subsectors of those industry clusters that you see up there that have the highest concentration and highest potential for growth based on economic projections. And so you'll see a little bit more of that data when we come to you on the 19th of this month. And I believe That is my last slide. So you do have within the report detailed information and metrics relative to all of the different strategies under those bigger target areas. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those, and I'd be happy to answer questions about those more in detailed areas or anything that I've presented this evening.
All right, Councilmember Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I'm trying to understand when you're setting target goals for overall economic growth, which is a combination of capital investment and job creation. And what you saw was that you came within your goals areas on job creation, but not within capital investment, which means that there is money not injected into the economy. How do you weigh the relative impact of job creation versus capital investment? And can you explain maybe whether you need to make adjustments in terms of the way you target industries or anything to even that out?
So we look at, so for every project that we work on, and I should say every significant project that we work on, especially if there are city incentives involved or any kind of financial resource coming from the city, we do look at an overall fiscal and economic impact analysis, which really tells us, based on this number of jobs within the industry and the wages, the number of direct, indirect, and induced jobs that will also be created related to that. It also tells us that for dollars invested, as well as jobs created related to construction, local expenditures related to construction. And so certainly we're not getting the impacts of that with the capital investment that we're seeing, but we're also not seeing a lot of projects that are that have the time to wait for new construction. And so they're going into existing facilities. We continue to have a capacity issue with real estate, especially as it relates to our manufacturing industries, which are our highest potential, highest growth industries. And so where we're really looking to pursue capital investment is in potential speculative development of those types of facilities. And so projects like you'll see with Modern West, with the Front Range office campus, and those capital investment dollars are not reflected in these numbers. These numbers are just reflective of the capital investment of the company themselves. So I don't know that we're necessarily, because we do have some pretty significant capital intensive speculative or potentially speculative development projects to accommodate our businesses. I don't necessarily know that we're losing out on revenue related to capital investment and new construction. It's just that it's not the companies that are spending those dollars, and so not reflected in what the numbers that you see there.
Would it be good to find a way to reflect that speculative investment in these reports?
Yes, I can add that to our reports. It also would be included in the development services reports of projects. So based on permitting, so we look at, that's how we determine capital investment, unless the company's telling us directly what their capital investment is what are the permit fees associated, which tell us they have to provide capital investment dollars to get permit fees. So that's where we get the information from. But I can include that in my report as well.
Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Jessica, you had a slide in here about the effort to retain primary businesses, and that was a major effort on the part of LEDP. Can you tell us what happened with AstraZeneca, and what could we have done to retain that company? Because the city put a lot of resources into getting them in here, and as far as just working with them to get them in here. Can you tell us, give us any update on that?
Sure. So I'll start with the last part first, and then go backwards. We did do a lot of work with AstraZeneca and with the city and with City Council to get direction on negotiating an incentive package for AstraZeneca. All of the City of Longmont's incentives are related to or associated with job creation. So if no jobs are created, no dollars are doled out for an incentive. And so technically speaking, no jobs were ever created in the City of Longmont. It was for the most part there were 20 warehouse jobs, which I'll explain in a second, but it was for the most part a real estate transaction We had a couple of opportunities to bring new products within the AstraZeneca biologics pipeline to the Longmont facility, which was part of the original intention of acquiring that facility. The one nearest term opportunity that we had was an acquisition that they had made in Dallas that ultimately did not receive FDA approval, so no need to move it to a new facility for production until it got through that. The Boulder facility was acquired by AstraZeneca maybe a year, maybe a little less, prior to their acquisition of the Longmont facility. So their initial focus was on building out and activating that Boulder facility, filling it with jobs, and getting the biologics line that they were developing there up and running, and then with the idea that they would then shift focus to the Longmont facility and the potential for bringing new product lines to the Longmont facility. In the meantime, they did activate the warehouse at the Longmont facility to support Boulder operations. Because none of the opportunities to bring new lines to the Longmont facility ever came to fruition, that Longmont facility was basically functioning as warehouse support for Boulder operations. Ultimately, the product line that they were developing and manufacturing in Boulder was not successful, or was less successful than they had anticipated, and no longer made that investment make sense for them. And because at that point in time, the Longmont facility was simply supporting Boulder operations from an activation, boots on the ground perspective, there was then no longer any sense in retaining the AstraZeneca Longmont facility either. So we'll see both the Boulder and Longmont facilities go back on the market probably in April. So I think for us, obviously, having another 800,000 square feet plus 160 acres back on the market is not ideal on the surface. But to me, it's more ideal to create an opportunity there than to have AstraZeneca sit on that real estate in perpetuity, not creating jobs there. And we've seen some significant interest. So the reality is there's probably not another 800,000 square foot biopharma manufacturing facility. And based on our history with those businesses, maybe not highest and best for the city of Longmont as we continue long-term job growth potential in the city. And so we've seen some significant development interest in those sites, and I think with a great deal of potential for actually creating an environment and doing some new development and redevelopment at those sites that will actually bring new jobs to the community. And that is our largest, kind of our last largest opportunity for significant employment center growth. So I think we'll pretty quickly see that turn from another loss to an opportunity for the city of Longmont to really see that area flourish.
And Jessica, to also add, we did spend a lot of time. We actually never brought an incentive package forward to council. They purchased the building before we brought that forward. And so there wasn't even a formal agreement with them.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Begley. Just two comments. One,
Sure.
It's not a I don't want to even use the word failure, but I mean, it's not a failure to not achieve the goals. The failure would be not to set them high enough, right? Mm-hmm. So I want to say that you set ambitious goals. The fact that if you fell short of the goal, I'd be more concerned if you knocked it out of the park on all of them.
Yep.
So good on you for setting ambitious goals. And I was really hard, my first council meeting, I was really hard on your report. I didn't want to be hard on you.
Yeah.
But I was hard on the report because it was difficult for me to see what the goals are and how you're going to know whether or not you've accomplished it. And I think you've come a long way. I really appreciate what you've done with the clarity and the specificity, both of what you're trying to achieve and the progress you've made and how you're going to evaluate whether or not you're accomplishing what you want to and whether or not we're getting the return on investment that we're making as a city in the partnership. So thanks for the work.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Thank you for your work.
Great. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Let's go on to, we okay? Keep going? All right. Let's move on to study session item number A, Button Rock Preserve Management Plan Update, presented by David Bell. And Dale, you presenting too? All Dave Bell. All right. And so the presentation, I asked for copies of the presentation so we kind of know what's coming. You're welcome. And so it's an eight slide presentation. So let's hold our questions till the end. And Mr. Bell, the time is yours.
Very good. Mayor, council members, David Bell, Natural Resource Manager. It is not all David Bell. I'm just here for a quick introduction of staff that'll be doing the presentation, as well as a little quick introduction of the project itself. And the Button Rock Master Plan, I think, is just a great project of a special property that I think Longmont is very fortunate to have. And as I think about going from Button Rock out to Sandstone Ranch and the same frame in between, it really is a unique system that Longmont has. As we're thinking about, I think between the Northern Arapahoe Tour, Prab Tours, Waterboard Tours, I think most of council has been up there. And if you haven't, let us know and we'll make sure you do get up there, because it is a very special place. And not only do we think it's special, people around the Front Range are finding that it's special too. So we're seeing a lot of increased use at Button Rock. I don't have Danielle will be doing the presentation. So we're seeing increased use along the Front Range with a lot of the natural areas. I talked to my counterparts of the county, and this year they'll be providing 2 shuttle services up to their mountain properties to get people up there to deal with the traffic in the mountains. Rocky Mountain National Park increased visitor use 40% in 5 years. So we're not unique to this, but as we're seeing this increase in use, we're seeing the things that come along with that, the increase in cars, increase in people, pets, pet waste, backcountry search and rescues. So as staff was looking at this, we said, instead of trying to do this piecemeal, one issue at a time, let's take a more holistic look at this and see how we can do it in a way that kind of serves the whole watershed. So sat down and worked with Ken Hewson, and we found some water savings, or savings in his water resource operational budget, and we decided to fund this project in 2018, roll those funds forward, and we now have staff that can address some time to this project. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to that staff member. First, I'd like to let you know that Ken Hewson, our water resource manager, is here. So is Jamie Friel, our watershed ranger. And then for the first time tonight, Danielle Levine is here as well. She's a project manager and volunteer coordinator. And she'll be working on this project. She'll give you a quick overview of the project, the scope of work, our goals, and then give some time at the end for questions, direction, and advice from council. So with that said, here's Danielle.
Thank you, David. Mayor Bagley, council members, thank you. So this is a presentation about the Button Rock Preserve Management Plan. I intend to come back next week for your review of an intergovernmental agreement, so I will get to that later in the presentation, so that will make sense too. The intent with this project is for it to be a multi-year project, kicking off this month and continuing on through the latter part of 2020. During the project, we intend to have a very robust public engagement process, engaging both the Longmont and Lyons communities, as well as getting feedback throughout from Water Board, Parks, Recreation, and Advisory Board, and the Board of Environmental Affairs. We'll also have a technical advisory committee consisting of agency stakeholders such as Colorado Parks and Wildlife, U.S. Forest Service, Colorado State Forest Service, and key stakeholders from the community. So to orient you to where Button Rock is, this is the vicinity map of Boulder County. The purple there is the city boundary of Longmont. The turquoise is Lyons, and Button Rock is there west of Lyons in the red. This is an up-close aerial of the property. The green is the boundary of the property. The boundary includes our latest acquisition of the Adams property here in the upper right corner. Here, the large water body in the middle is Ralph Price Reservoir, and this smaller one here is Longmont Reservoir. And then we also have a section of the North St. Vrain Creek running through the property. In terms of how this project fits into the council work plan, although the property is outside city boundaries, a goal of having a healthy creek corridor through the city This project ties in because to have a healthy creek corridor through the city, we need to have a healthy watershed. In terms of how does this fit into Envision Longmont, similar responsible stewardship of resources. It's a unique preserve, and it's got unique natural resources, cultural, historic resources. So it's something that's unique to the city of Longmont for its residents. And working on this management plan will help preserve clean, safe drinking water for our residents into the future. Goals, needs, and desired outcomes with this project. The need David spoke to. As we're seeing increased visitor use at the preserve, we want to take a look at the rules and regulations and see if those match up or if there's a gap. Rules and regulations were developed in the 1990s. We're continuing to see more and more visitors every year. Is there a gap between the rules and how we're managing it now and what the preserve might need to be better protected? In terms of project framework, we have consultant teams consisting of DHM Design, who will be working largely on the visitor use plan and a piece of the resource inventory. We have river restoration, they're river engineer experts, so they'll be working on water resources, infrastructure, and facilities. And then Colorado Natural Heritage Program. And so here I come back to the intergovernmental agreement that I mentioned at the beginning. Colorado Natural Heritage Program is a nonprofit associated with Colorado State University. And so to get onto the property and do a natural resource inventory as a governmental entity, we would need to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with Colorado Natural Heritage Program. So that will come to you next week for your review. That is everything. I'm ready for questions if you have any or feedback.
All right, well, actually, let's do it questions first, and then someone make a motion, and then we can debate, dialogue, et cetera, regarding the motion. Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Thank you for that presentation. It was really good and informative. But when you talk about the management program, and I do see in the upper right corner this picture of the, 6 dogs that they have, that kind of activity has really increased, and I was told that the dogs are contaminating the water. Is that part of your management program?
Yes, Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Peck, to answer your question, that is one thing that's coming along with increased visitorship, is that with more people come more pets, and therefore more dog waste. Mm-hmm. And that is our drinking water supply. That is a protected preserve, so that is definitely a piece of what we'll be looking at in this management plan process.
Great, I just wanted to bring that point home. Thanks.
Nobody's in the queue, but I guess my question is, like Councilmember Peck, and I'm sure other council members, the ranger right there, what is your name, sir?
Jamie Friel, sir.
How do you say that?
Jamie Friel.
Friel. Oh, so Friel, sir. Okay, got it, Friel. Got it. I'm not used to being, that still freaks me out. All right, so Jamie Friel. So my question is, right, we're about ready to undergo this two-year consultant process. And so my question is, are we going through that to go through it? Or if we were to ask Mr. Friel and David Bell, what are the issues currently that we have to deal with? I mean, do we need to pay a consultant? I mean, are the things obvious and we're just paying someone to, we don't want to upset people with dogs up there, or other things that people currently do that we're thinking about taking away from them? Or do we really not know what needs to be done and we really need to pay somebody and spend 2 years to figure out what we should do as a city?
Mayor Bagley, I think the answer is kind of a mixed bag of, we have a 3,000 acre preserve, but we don't have, we don't know what we have on the preserve in terms of natural resources, cultural, historic resources. We don't have that baseline data. The reason for this 2-year process is to, in a structured way, go through, gather that baseline data, and then have a scientific underpinning for looking at all these things, and then using that scientific approach to get at what are our goals and what can our management decisions be.
So your response, so what I'm hearing is it's necessary, and it's not something just to keep people from wanting to kill council or staff. Is that what I'm
Correct.
hearing? Okay, I'm seeing Mr. Friel, the expert in the room, say yes. Okay, thank you. Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. A couple things. Just for the sake, both from my education and maybe just to get out in the public, and maybe I'm the only one that would wonder about this, could you give us the distinctions between a preserve, which this is, and a recreational area or a park?
Absolutely. Button Rock Preserve was designated as such in the 1990s when we were, as a way to designate it as a protected area and to signify that we are protecting our municipal water supply. So it's the only preserve in our system.
And the difference between a preserve and a designated recreation area or a park? What are the different rules, expectations, and consequences?
Well, you know, Button Rock Preserve falls into an interesting category because I believe I'm right in saying that in our code is designated as a park so that we are able to enforce our rules and regulations outside our city boundaries. So
here's what I'm driving at.
So not being a biologist, generally for what I do, and if David, why don't you jump up beside me in case I just totally missed this. Preserve, you try to protect the area to ensure, in this case, the water supply and the activities that occur. When I think of a recreation area, that is where you tend to allow folks to engage in more activities. And the best example that I would give you for that is Union Reservoir. And then when you look at parks, and this is where it gets it's slightly different in our code. In order to enforce the rules, we have to put it under a park. But parks are generally sandstone. In those types of areas, we do have broader open space classifications. But to me, there's a use activity associated with it. That's how the non-biologist sees the world.
How does the natural resources manager see the world?
The way I would see it is actually the history of Longmont as much as the natural resources up there protection. And Longmont's done a really good job of saying that we want to protect this area. So in the bond language, they set this land aside. We said that to the public we would let you up there. But I think primarily it's our water, our drinking water, it's our watershed. Secondarily, it's preserved for wildlife and natural areas. And then tertiarily, if we get the public up there and they can use it, they can have a low impact and not impact the wildlife or the drinking water, then we want to figure out how we can uphold that obligation to get the public up there. But that is lower down on our level of how we do it with a park. We want to bring people out. We want them to engage. We want them to touch. We want to kind of feel the natural area. Up at our preserves, the human use becomes the lower level in how we're trying to manage that property.
And the best example to that is in terms of fishing. We issue a set amount of permits for fishing. It's not open for anyone to just go fish. You have to get the permit.
Correct. And I guess while I'm up here, since you invited me to the mic, the one thing I would like just to echo Danielle when it's mentioned about the are we just doing this? Danielle did a really good job, but for me coming along, one of the things, again, doing a great job saying property aside, baseline data, it's hard to make a management decision and have councils or staff stand behind it if you don't know what you really are protecting, what the resources are there. So if we would have done this 20 years ago, it'd been awesome. But if you can't do it 20 years ago, do it now. Exactly.
May I ask two more questions?
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm mindful that I'm occupying the floor. Give us some idea, because I've heard Jamie give us an idea on other occasions, of the variety of visitors, the range in terms of geographic representation, both numbers and where they come from, showing up at the preserve.
So Danielle asked, do we just keep doing popcorn up and down here? But I'm going to do popcorn up and down and let Jamie answer this. He's up there on a daily basis. He's been doing a great job. He's installed some counters for vehicles and pedestrians, so he's going to have a very good handle on this.
Mr. Friel.
Mayor Bagley and council members, we're seeing a huge fluctuation in visitation. In the past, the infrastructure was based on having 7 to maybe 15,000 people arriving every year to visit our park, visit the preserve. And now, with the new visitation counters I have, it hasn't been a complete year yet, but we're over 60,000 people coming. Wow. And the vehicle use is also about half of that, about 35,000 vehicles every year now, going down a box canyon, basically. And then if you look at where they're coming from Denver, they're coming from Fort Collins, they're coming from Texas, they're coming from all over the place because of the explosion from social media. They're not seeing a sign on the highway anymore. They don't need to. We don't even have a sign on the highway. But what we do have are people that are saying, Button Rock is a wonderful place, so why don't you go visit? And they're coming in droves. Part of this management plan will be trying to figure out where these people are coming from and who they are, and trying to see how many people are actually from Longmont and how Longmont's resources are being used and cared for by the citizens, or whether other folks are taking advantage of that, perhaps. And then we'll have to look at a whole wide variety of things. As David mentioned earlier, a lot of parks are using a busing system. We might need to install a gate. We might need to charge a visitation fee, maybe something like unions. Everything will be on the table, and that's part of the reason for this, because it's just such a wide variety of things we have to look at. We need to find out what we have, what Longmont wants to do with it, and the best way to do that is with this management plan and find out what we actually are taking care of.
Thanks, Jamie. That's 6 to 9 times, right? 6x to 9x.
And actually, we've done some parking sign additions this last year, and I would guess that we probably had another third as many people coming, because we had people that were not able to fit into our parking lot, and they were just parking down the county road. And that was about doubling our car load per day, especially on the weekends. So conservatively, we're over 60,000 on an annual basis.
So my last question would be, there was, I know in the write-up, a reference to the public engagement process, but it would be helpful to know the scope and scale of what our intentions are in public engagement, because there's a council at some point in time, 2 years from now, that's going to be asked to make maybe some very difficult decisions. It may be unpopular decisions, but people ought to, number one, people need to know what's at stake, and it would be helpful to know the kind of engagement we're going to bring this process through with our community in anticipation of whatever those decisions are. Thanks, and I'll just listen.
Mayor Bagley and Councilmember Waters, in answer to what is the public engagement process going to look like, we are kicking off with DHM Design later this month, and the DHM is comprised of professional facilitators, urban planners, community engagement strategists. So they are going to help us develop this plan, but I can tell you some things that I'm certain will occur. We will have a website. It will have something like an open forum on it where the public can give comments, and then we can look at those in a qualitative way and a quantitative way later, and DHM will help us do all of that and summarize all of that so that we've gotten every comment and we know what that is. So there'll be that sort of thing. We'll have a visitor use survey of some type, and this consulting firm worked after the flood in the community of Lyons on their master planning process after the flood, their parks master plan. So they're familiar with the local community of Lyons. So they're familiar with the area, so that'll help us a lot in terms of the best ways to reach out and engage our communities.
And once they nail down the community involvement plan, which will generally follow our strategies we use as an organization, we will get that information to council.
All right, so keep out Texans. That's what I heard. All right.
Yes.
Councilmember Finley.
We could add a few more on there. Are you ready for a motion? Mayor?
Make a motion.
I move that we direct staff to proceed with the Button Rock Preserve Management Plan.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, but we still have Marcia in the queue. Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. Having heard initial presentations on the state of affairs at Button Rock, I am actually a little surprised by the mildness and duration of this recommendation. I absolutely see the benefits in understanding all of the different resources that we have here and the environmental impact that our visitors are having. But one environmental impact that we already know really well as a heavy impact on the staff, is the impact of just a really unreasonable amount of dog waste that is accumulating in the Button Rock area. And I am surprised that the recommendation is that we wait 2 years to do anything about that. Given that there's a motion on the table, I'm, as a point of procedure, unsure what to do.
I know what you're implying. Why don't we
Yeah.
go ahead and vote? If there's no further debate, let's go ahead and vote and then then follow it up with a motion if you'd like to make one.
I would, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and vote. Councilmember Martin? All right, that passes unanimously. All right, no motion is currently on the table. Councilmember Martin?
Sorry. I'd like to move to authorize the staff to, pending results of this survey, to close or restrict the Button Rock Preserve to people with dogs or to dogs until we really know what the impact is and what we can do about it. And I'm not trying to litigate the decision of whether to make it a 100% closure or whether it's going to be a number per day or what they want to do. But what I have heard as the board studied this was that the problem is really fairly urgent, and I'm not comfortable with it taking 2 years.
I'd second that. So the chair restating the motion is, while this investigation and report is being compiled, we actually place a moratorium on dogs up at Button Rock. Well, we didn't know that. We have a current study ongoing. But yeah, that I believe is the motion. Correct, Councilmember Martin?
Mayor Begley, I was a little more weaselly about that. What I said was to authorize the staff to close it to dogs or to restrict the number of dogs allowed in the park pending the study as they see fit. Is that clear, Councilmember Peck?
And I seconded it only because I'd heard the same thing, which allows us now to discuss the motion. And the question for staff is, Mr. Friel, is this necessary? Meaning, I've heard a lot of talk about dogs impacting our watershed, our drinking water, and just dog poop in general up at Button Rock. And is this something that would be a good idea? Or do we wait 2 years and just wait? What would you do? What's your advice?
The council might want to consider something perhaps a little less drastic. If we could restrict dogs to being perhaps on leash at all times everywhere in the park, that would be a way to regulate and maintain some sort of control over the dogs and where they're contributing to the waste near our water. That might be something that would work in the short term, so that when we do get the data back from the plan, then we can maybe move it a step further if we need to.
Okay, Councilmember Peck?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I agree with the ranger, Mr. Friel, but also when I'm looking at these pictures, we have 3 people with 12 dogs. I mean, seriously. So I would even go further and say restrict it to 1 dog on a leash. And they have to have some pickup bags with them. And if they're not, give them to them. so that they actually are responsible dog owners. But I see no reason to let people take packs of dogs up to Button Rock Reservoir or any place, really.
Or small children. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Peck, the thing I'd add to Jamie's comments as far as this being something that probably is one of the reasons I listed the reasons why I do this holistically, but knowing there were some driving forces behind it, and dogs and dog waste was definitely a piece of that. Danielle has reminded me that the natural resource component of it and the dog piece is something we'd be doing earlier on in the process, and we could come back if you wanted to restrict it earlier to something that you felt was appropriate, then we could come back with more options sooner than the 2-year period with, is it on leash, is it no dogs, is dogs on leash, is it a certain number of dogs? We could do that earlier on in the process than 2 years. If you wanted to restrict something right away with some guidelines, we could bring you options back definitely before that 2-year process, within a year.
Councilmember Martin?
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I actually worded my motion the way I did because I thought that it would be best to let the experts decide. So I would believe that what I said would give you folks the latitude to do anything between just a leash rule and completely closing the park to dogs. And that was my intention.
So,
So I would, I'd like to leave it that way, but if you all want to be more protected than that, then I will change my motion to something that you suggest.
so the chair misread the motion. So the motion is put it in staff's hands to come back with something more immediate in order to address the dog issue, which might include leashes, dog ratios per park visitor, et cetera, but we leave that in your hands.
Right.
And was that the motion?
Yeah, I wasn't going to make it something that had to come back. I was just going to move that it be at your discretion. So you could start with a leash rule, or you could start with a closure and see if there's a riot. But you know, what I honestly believe, you know, having heard Mr. Friel's report, Friel, excuse me. You know, that he's picking up a lot of dog poop and that bags don't necessarily help because he's picking up bagged dog poop off the ground. You know, we're drinking this water, and so I want the people who are on the ground at Button Rock and know what's really happening to be able to use their discretion with respect to dogs. And so my preference is to leave the motion the way it is.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, I was just going to be supportive of what Councilwoman Martin said in the first place. I think that gives you leeway to use your discretion because you guys know what you're doing. I look at this picture of the cars, I'm shocked because, yeah, that's a big problem too. But anyway, yeah, the dogs need to be taken care of first.
Councilmember Finley?
I think I would rather wait and get your recommendation and set actual policy than to leave it up to, without any data. I mean, until we have data, we can't really make a policy that is as effective. So I probably won't vote for the motion, but I would look forward to your recommendations.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. What concerns do you have? If we approve this motion, do you or Jamie or anybody else have concerns about how this plays out?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, I think staff would take that forward. I think the things we would really be thinking about up front is getting the information out and trying to do it in a way that I think is fair to the public. With that direction, we want to make sure that we're using all of our social media, all of our ways that we do it. If we're making a change sooner than that 2-year process, that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're setting people up for success for their use of the park as well as success in the park for staff too. So that'd be the biggest concern, is making sure that the change, whatever that would be, would go in effect, would have time and notice for the public.
So I want to say I share the concerns about spoiling our environment and contaminating our most valuable resource, natural resource, is our clean water. And these guys are doing, Jamie and, we've been up there and seen a great job, single-handedly he does, with some volunteers. I am concerned, take this issue, let's substitute another issue. I could give you some specific examples of making a decision we have anecdotes, we've heard the stories about how many pounds, but to have it be data-free concerns me. Not because these guys don't know what they're doing. In fact, they've said we need more lead time. But I could give you a list of items where we might craft policy, or somebody want to push us on policy. I could give you one that's top of mind right now, where I would say, absent data, I would dig in and resist crafting policy on some other issues without data. So I'm concerned about, on this one, it gets a pass, even though I understand the nature of the problem. I'm concerned about setting a precedent. If we can give direction without data on this, we can give direction without data on a lot of things, and be pretty inconsistent, or consistently data neutral. And I'm concerned about that.
Nobody's in the queue. I guess the spirit of my seconding the motion is that, and I would normally agree with Dr. Waters on the data issue. However, when I remember when I was in the what grade was I in? 6th grade at Maplewood Middle School, Dr. Waters. And I remember watching when the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded, and it didn't explode because of lack of data. It exploded because they weren't sure what was going to happen, and they decided to launch anyway. And so I guess in this particular case, I am for short-term better safe than sorries, such as dogs or car issues, or I just don't want to wait 2 years when Mr. Friel already has all the data he needs to say, yeah, we have too much dog poop, or we have too many cars, or our watershed's being impacted. I'd rather shorten it, get the data, and then either continue it, make it more stringent, or say, hey, we were wrong. Let's just let the dogs up there run wild. So, Dr. Waters?
So I wouldn't argue with your analogy to the Challenger, although I think they had data they ignored in that case.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So that wasn't data neutral. That was just stupid to ignore it because they were in a hurry. They were in a hurry. So they made a decision to launch when they shouldn't have. So if we really want to extend the metaphor. Now, what these fellows have told us is if we gave them some time to bring back a recommendation ahead of the 2-year schedule based on data, they would do that. I've also heard they need time, even if they had a ton of data that they presented tonight. If we made this decision, they're going to want time to. They don't want people showing up there without leashes or with too many dogs or whatever the constraint is. I guess I don't know what's lost if we modify whatever. I don't want to modify anybody's motion if we do that what they've suggest we do, and that is give them direction to bring back not the whole package in 2 years, segment it. When they have a recommendation ready on dogs, bring it back. If that's 2 weeks or 2 months.
As you get data, bring it back. Don't wait 2 years and take action to protect our preserve. I think that's the message. Councilmember Martin, you'll have the last word before we vote.
Okay. I don't necessarily, obviously, this motion seems to be controversial because of a lot of people who want to walk dogs. But still, knowing as I do that there is a lot of data about dog waste in particular, both observational and I think Mr. Friel measured. I mean, do you, how much dog poop do you cart out of there?
During the summertime, over 250 pounds a week, but that's not the waste that worries me. The waste that worries me is the one that I don't get. To be honest with you, in certain areas, the dogs are off leash, and no one is really picking up the waste from there. And it only concerns me because it is our drinking water, you know, and I take it very seriously that there are over 100,000 people downstream of me that are directly affected by that.
Me too.
And the other
including
thing
me.
is to balance it out with the resources that we have to spend on the park. I'm the only full-time employee at the park, so it's hard to keep up picking up those things, writing grants, taking care of the forestry. It's a multifaceted area, multifaceted job, and I just don't want to see people shortcut on their drinking water because that's what this whole city really depends upon, and that's what the river corridor does for this city. And it's an amazing place, and we're so blessed to have it. So that's my
And right now it's for free, right?
correct.
So we don't charge anything for people to go up and enjoy it,
That is correct, and we don't restrict that to just Longmont residents or.
which we should revisit.
Right.
So-
Do I still have the floor, Mayor?
Sure.
So, I think, you know, whether we direct people to bring back the stages, the data in stages or not, spring is coming, and I think that we need something in place, and maybe it does need to be more restricted than what I said, although we hear that we should trust the staff a lot. But I think that we need something to, some restriction in place pending data, because we have, 250 pounds a week is data, in my opinion. So is it appropriate for me to amend the motion now, or what would we
Sure.
do? Can I do that?
Sure, let's hear what you say.
All right. I would change my motion to say that the staff should restrict dogs to 1 dog per person on a leash, pending data about a better recommendation for animal control going forward. Pardon me? With a poop bag, although, again, Mr. Friel has told us that really doesn't help a whole lot. But sure, a leash and a poop bag.
All right, there's a motion, and it's been seconded. Let's vote. What? We're voting on the amended motion. All right, that passes 4-3 with council members Bagley, Peck, Martin, and Christensen 4, and council members Rodriguez, Finley, and Waters against. And I would like to make a motion that in general, we direct staff to bring back, as they collect data at any time, any suggestions that you might have that we might put in place to protect our preserve pending the outcome of our 2-year collection of data. Can I get back to Lusanne? But we don't want to vote. I just need to see if there's anybody in the queue to. Okay, there's not, so let's vote. We're voting on just staff has direction to bring back any additional ongoing changes to the Button Proc Preserve rules prior to the 2 years. All right, that passes unanimously. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to early childhood education and data resources. Let's go ahead and take a 2-minute break, though. All right, let's keep going. Maybe we'll get out of here in time to watch a Netflix episode or something. All right, let's move on to the report on children, youth, and families early intervention. Christina Pacheco-Sims, welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Mayor Bagley and members of council. I'm Christina Pacheco Sims, Children, Youth, and Families Division Manager. I'm here with Olga Bermudez, our Community Coordinator for Early Prevention and Bright Eye Staff Liaison, as well as with a few representatives from organizations who belong to the Bright Eyes Coalition. In December, Mayor Bagley and several city council members expressed interest in working on some of the objectives in council's work plan goal A1. Provide high-quality pre-K learning opportunities for all children so they have a good start in life. As a follow-up, Mayor Bagley, Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, and Councilmember Waters met with staff to discuss collecting Longmont-specific early childhood data to inform their efforts to annually increase the percentage of Longmont 3- and 4-year-olds in quality preschool programs. Staff then compiled the available data that's included in tonight's packet. Tonight, we wanted to take the opportunity to provide highlights of the report, talk about demand for early childhood services in Longmont, talk about Longmont's capacity to provide early childhood services, talk about initial considerations that staff identified after preparing this report for council, and answer any questions that you may have about the report. So here's what we know about the data. There's not one source for data for numbers of 3- and 4-year-olds in Longmont and gap in services, especially as it relates to friend, family, and neighbor care. Staff consulted multiple sources of sources and organizations working in early childhood in order to begin to paint the picture for Longmont. Longmont's population estimate from December 2018 is about 96,192. And we estimate that about 6.3% is under 5 years old. So that's about a little over 6,000 children. We also know that 1,244 Longmont 3- and 4-year-olds qualified for Medicaid in 2018. So Medicaid is calculated at 130% of federal poverty. So to kind of put that in perspective, that's $27,000 a year for a family of 3 and $32,500 a year for a family of 4. This is what we discovered about demand and capacity in Longmont. Wild Plum, Longmont's Head Start program, estimates that there's about 500 3- and 4-year-olds living in poverty and are not receiving some sort of preschool experience. We looked at several areas when we addressed capacity. Head Start serves low-income families, and they enroll at 100% of federal poverty level, but they can go to 130% if they've enrolled everybody on their wait list. Their enrollment for 3- and 4-year-olds is 155 slots. The Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, is funded through the State Department of Human Services. We know that we have 99 child care providers in Longmont. This includes centers and home daycares. The total licensed capacity for Longmont providers is 5,036 children. 57 of those 99 providers take CCAP. 82 of those 99 providers are rated by Colorado Shines. 42 of the 82 providers are Colorado Shines rated and take CCAP. CCAP's goal in Boulder County is to have 75% of children in high quality care. And that's what Colorado Shines does. They rate childcare. In Longmont, we know that there's only 50% of children that are in high quality care. So we also know that we have 447 families in Longmont that are on CCAP currently.
How many?
447. Staff has asked State Human Services for the numbers of 3- and 4-year-olds on the wait list for CCAP to add that information to our information on gaps as well.
Can you repeat those numbers again,
Sure.
just briefly?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That'd be helpful.
Do you want to know the child care numbers, the
ones
numbers
that
of
you
families?
went through, you said there's 5,036 children.
There's 5,036 slots. That's our capacity slots in Longmont. The license capacity for Longmont providers is 5,036 children/slots. Okay. Sure.
It wasn't. That's why I asked for it to be repeated. So there's 5,036 licensed children slots.
Mhm.
And when you say licensed, you mean preschool or daycare or both?
That includes everything. Licensed, yeah, birth to, yeah.
Okay.
That doesn't just include 3 and 4.
All right. You want to run through the rest of those numbers that you
Yes.
gave us?
Sure. So we have a total of 99 childcare providers in Longmont. 57 of those 99 providers take CCAP. 82 of those 99 providers are rated by Colorado Shines. 42 of those 82 providers are Colorado Shines rated and take CCAP. Okay. So the goal for Boulder County is to have at least 75% of all children in high quality care. So Colorado Shines rates child care from 1 to 5. And so the goal is to have children in that 3 to 5 level. And so at this point, we know that we have 58% in high quality care. And the goal really for Boulder County is to have them in that 75%.
Christina, of those 99 child care providers, are those preschool facilities as well as licensed daycare homes?
And there's a slide that we'll get to that
Okay.
in a few once we talk about CPP. And if that doesn't answer your question, Councilmember Peck, I'll be happy to revisit that.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so let's talk about Colorado Preschool Program. The Colorado Preschool Program is a state-funded early childhood education program administered by the Colorado Department of Education. CPP provides access to quality early childhood education for children who lack overall learning readiness. Each year, the General Assembly provides preschool funding for 20,160 children who have certain risk factors in their lives that are associated with later challenges in school. In 2013, 2014, and 2018, the General Assembly expanded CPP through the Early Childhood At-Risk Enhancement Program, which provided more flexible funding to offer half or full-day kindergarten for an additional 9,200 children. So what that did was expand and provide the capacity to serve 29,360 eligible children statewide each year. And applications for CPP are accepted every 2 years. And so this is what it looks like in St. Vrain Valley School District. We have 794 slots, currently with 51 openings. And what I did was break down the prices for those different slots. Oh, did I move too fast? Oh, did I do that? Oh, there I did. I'm sorry about that. So I skipped a slot. So St. Vrain Valley School District has about 300 CPP slots that they make available to low-income families. And we did inquire what their CPP enrollment is at this time. Head Start has 58 CPP slots. And this is a correction in your report. I think we had 155. So it's actually 58 that Head Start has. And they make these slots available to low-income families, and they are fully enrolled. So this application, as I mentioned, happens every 2 years. I'm sorry about that. I skipped a slide. So this slide focuses on what the preschool slots look like for full pay. So 14 preschools are located within the city of Longmont, and that's 794 slots. And what I've done is broken down the tuition rates for all preschool programs for the 2017-2018 school year. Prices really range from $175 for 2.5 days to $290 per week for 4 half days. And the tuition payments are broken down for 9 months. The Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition and PASO, Providers Advancing School Outcomes program, has been training and working with friend, family, and neighbor care providers since 2006. Currently, there are 20 FFN providers through PASO that serve infant through preschool in Longmont. Their program targets low-income Spanish-speaking families and unlicensed Spanish-speaking child care providers. Providers in this program participate in 120 hours of early childhood education training. 202 families have been interviewed by the program this school year alone. 85 have 3 and 4-year-olds. 66 of those children are in preschool, and 19 children are on wait lists or not enrolled. So also included in the report are considerations that really can be broken down into 3 distinct areas: providers, parents, and participants. In the provider area, considerations include really examining the CCAP data and looking at courses of action, such as local funding, to address those wait lists. Exploring opportunities to increase Longmont's high-quality care from 58 to at least 75% in alignment with Boulder CCAP's goals. This is an objective that fits well through Children, Youth, and Families funding received from the Temple Hoyne Buell Foundation, and this grant is scheduled to come before council at the end of this month for approval. And by taking this approach, we have the opportunity, Councilmember Peck, to impact 29 child care centers and help them move from Colorado Shines levels 1 and 2 to higher levels and really impact 199 children. This also supports the Temple Hoyne Buell grant work. Staff has a meeting with Boulder County CCAP next Wednesday in order to begin plans about how we might go about completing this work. Finally, we have the opportunity to explore provider needs in a summit to generate tangible ideas from the providers themselves. We can explore ideas they have of what it would take to move these centers from level 1 and 2 to levels 3 and 4. We can also take this opportunity at a summit to generate ideas for training needs for our existing early childhood providers in the Longmont community. What is it that they need as far as capacity building, training? What is it in order that they need to stay in the field and continue the work? With parents, we can further collaborate on work with friend, family, neighbor care providers and organizations such as Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition and the PASO program in areas such as training, outreach, and local funding. We can build upon programs that we know work and have effective outcomes. We can utilize the nurturing parenting model to meet the needs and focus on parents as first teachers. Staff provided a presentation to council in November, and one of the areas we discussed is expanding the reach of this program with local funding. The focus of this could be on low-income English language learners and parents of young children. Utilizing this model gives us the opportunity to assist parents in teaching their children not only self-regulation, but leadership, and really begin that at a young age. For participants, we can explore scholarships for the 500 children living in poverty who do not have access to preschool experience. So this information wraps up the considerations and concludes the information that I have for tonight, and I'll do my best to answer any questions that council may have.
I've got a couple. So just understanding the numbers, so there are 6,060 children, more or less, 6.3% of our population under the age of 5.
More or less, yes.
Right. And then there are 5,036 licensed preschool type facilities or organizations, both FFN, Friends, Family, and Neighbors, all the way to the more organized traditional preschool / daycare. Is that
Mayor Bagley, sometimes friend, family, neighbor care is not licensed.
okay?
The 5,036 is a number that we received from CCAP, and they look at their numbers, I believe, every 2 weeks. And so that represents daycare centers and licensed in-home providers.
Okay, so then that leaves just looking at your numbers, 500 3- and 4-year-olds living in poverty, not getting or receiving preschool experiences, plus an additional 550 that are not necessarily in poverty, but are either at home with a parent or in unlicensed daycare.
Mayor Bagley, yes, the 500 represents Wild Plum Head Start's best guess at or estimate at the children living in poverty. And the second number that you asked about was
So I'm just looking at the gap between 6,060 children and then 5,036 children in licensed daycare slots. But is that number for 5 years old and younger, or is that for all kids?
The 6,060, Mayor Bagley, is for all children under 5. And that represents all children, whether they're living in poverty or not. That's just a percentage of under 5.
But I'm talking about the 5,036 licensed slots. Is that just preschool age children?
Yes.
Okay. And then so my question is, the 500 children that are in poverty, not getting preschool experiences, there's a gap. That takes us up to 5,536, meaning if we had licensed facilities that could take them. But there's a gap between 5,536 and 6,060. So my question is, what is the difference between 5,536 and that 6,060? Is that because kids are, I know, thank you, Councilmember Finley, I know the difference mathematically, but what does the mathematical difference represent? Are these kids that we need to be focused on, or is the real number 500?
Mayor Bagley, I think that what staff really looked at was the children who needed services the most. And so we really did focus on children in poverty. So it really was looking at that 500 number.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
I do. I think I do get it. And then the other question is on the St. Vrain Valley School District, 794 slots, and it says there's 51 openings. Does that mean there's currently 51 openings that are unfilled? Meaning
Mayor
that
Bagley, yes,
we
correct.
could put 51 kids in there right now.
Correct, at full pay.
At full pay.
Correct.
Got it. Whereas FFN has a wait list.
FFN, Mayor Bagley, is friend, family, neighbor care. And so we don't really have a way of looking at whether there's a wait list or not.
So why do we have 19 on wait lists then, if we don't know?
19 on wait lists for preschools. So 19 families that are working with, 19, I see. So 19 children who are involved with the PASO program and with the Colorado Statewide Parent Coalition. 19 of those children are currently on wait lists to get into preschools.
Not a full pay, a subsidized CCAP?
Either or. I would suspect that it probably is subsidized.
Okay.
Based on their target population being low income. My guess is that it would be subsidized.
Okay, I've got other questions, but I'm going to go on now. Councilmember Finley.
I had a question about the Head Start numbers. Under demand and capacity for 3 and 4-year-olds, it says Head Start has 155 slots. And then on the next slide, it said Head Start slots 58. I don't understand. What's the difference?
Council member Finley, Mayor Bagley, 155 slots represents their total capacity. The 55 slots represents their CCAP capacity. Or the 58 slots, excuse me, represents their CCAP capacity.
The CCAP is fully paid for by that
I mean,
organization?
CPP, I am so sorry, these acronyms, the Colorado Preschool Program slots. The 58 slots are Colorado Preschool Program slots. And essentially how that works.
Is that 58 of the 155 or on top of the 55?
How that often works is that if a child is enrolled at halftime Head Start, for example, a CPP slot can be used to supplement the program to then enroll that child at full-time care. And so it can sometimes be included in that 155 number to provide a family with a full daycare option, or a full care option, I should say.
So the 58 is what of 150? Is the 58 included in the 155, or is that
In some
addition?
cases, yes. In some cases, yes. In some cases, there are children who are in only half-day preschool. And in some cases, part of those 58 CPP slots would be used to have a child in a full care slot situation. So they would use a CPP slot to have a Head Start child, for example, then be able to attend preschool in the afternoon. Does that make sense?
I still don't know the total number of Head Start spots.
So if I could,
Sure.
this is kind of complicated to figure out all these numbers.
Yeah.
It'd be great if there was like one source. I think to clarify the mayor and city council members, Karen Roney, Community Services. So Head Start receives 155 funded slots through the federal government. And so and then as Christina mentioned, out of the Colorado preschool slots, the St. Vrain Valley School District allocates 58, right? Is that right?
Yes,
58 of those slots to Head Start. And so what Head Start does is it uses those funds so City of Longmont also invests some dollars into Head Start and some other funding sources like Boulder County. So while Plum and Head Start is able to, in addition to those 155, they're able to actually serve more preschool students with the braided funding from CPP, City of Longmont, and a couple of other sources. So we have been able to, like at the Meeker Neighborhood Center, the City of Longmont has, remodeled the Meeker Center for a while, Plum, and we were able to offer 4 more classrooms for Head Start kids with those different braided sources that's on top of the 155 slots that the federal government gets.
So just to clarify, 155 slots from the feds.
From the feds.
An additional 58 through CPP.
And remember, and Mayor, that those are, the CPP
slots.
are those 2.5 hours, those are half-day slots, so
Half-day
that's where the
slots.
braided funding comes in from other sources.
So you can't add them together?
No.
Yeah.
I guess if that's the question,
Yeah, that's
that's
actually-
the answer, no.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
Right. And then CCAP, how many are those? How many slots are there for those?
So CCAP. So let me look at my data again. So CCAP is part of the data that we want to get from State Human Services, just as far as, you know, how many children are on wait lists, how many are enrolled, and kind of what that gap is.
Okay, so we know that 57 of the 99 child care providers take CCAP, but we don't
Yes.
know how many actual children at those 57 facilities are getting CCAP. That accurate?
Right.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, I apologize, didn't see you.
I'm right here.
Well, I know I see you. I didn't see the.
Okay, anyway, are we going to, this presentation is something that we don't actually have in our packet, but are we going to discuss the rest of the packet, or should I wait for those questions? The questions I had are that on page 2 of the Children, Youth, and Families Early Intervention thing,
Sure.
it says that under service gaps, that Boulder County closed the wait list in 2017 due to budget constraints. The wait list is starting to open up. However, all those slots have gone to Boulder and Lafayette families. There are at least 8 other cities in Boulder County, and I'm wondering why none of us have gotten any of those slots.
Mayor Pro Tem Christensen, Mayor Bagley, that is something that we also want to discuss with CCAP. When you look at the breakdown of the total number of CCAP cases in Boulder County, and that's towards the end, page 4, that's the second larger bullet. In Boulder County, there's 875 cases in Boulder County, and Longmont represents 51%. It could be that it was more, that they were awarding slots to different cities to maybe make that more equitable. One could suppose, but you know, to make the slots more, if we have 51% at this time. But that is something that we can clarify with CCAP when we meet with them. Why is it that those slots were awarded when it was opened to cities other than Longmont?
Yeah, okay. The other question I had is, there is, I spoke with somebody at the meeting that Councilwoman Martin and, what?
Just get close.
Oh, okay. I spoke with the woman from the state about single parents. There is nothing in here. Single parents and their children those kids are not considered at risk by the state of Colorado. So they get no special impetus or special incentives or grants that the same things that, say, other families that are considered at risk would get, even though they're living in poverty and they're highly unstable often. There are 2 major studies that just came out on single children, and it is, one of them was 19,000 people in the United States, and another was, I think, 27,000 in the UK. Those children never really do as well all the way through college and after. And so it really is something we need to actually consider at risk, because it is a big risk. And we don't even collect statistics, really, for how many single parents there are. We used to. I asked the state demographer why they don't collect them, and they said they wouldn't have any way of knowing. Well, that can't be true. I mean, just look at their income tax returns. I just think it's something we should consider, because on the slides that you presented, we have full care, or we have 4 days of half-day preschool. But someone who is the sole support which I have been, means you have to somehow then find a 5th day, and then in fact you have to take your child from preschool and put them somewhere else for the rest of the day. And you're already paying $290 or a total of $12,000 a year.
Correct.
No, yeah, something like that. 12,000 to 9,000 or $10,000 a year out of your, 23,088 is minimum wage before taxes. After taxes, that would be 1,730. So you're already paying 3/4 of your, it's
Right.
it's impossible. And then to try and put another thing on top of it. The magnitude of this problem for certain segments of the population is just, it's catastrophic. That's why people don't put their child in daycare or in preschool or in licensed daycare, because they just need somebody who will actually take care of their child. That's why I really value what you're doing with PASOS and other things that educate people who are friends and family, but who want to be educated on how to give these kids a really quality experience, even though they're not maybe licensed yet. They can become licensed. So I think that's a very, very good thing for us to not forget. There has to be a way for people who are working parents and who have, say, off hours things too, as you did mention in this report. Those people have nowhere to go. There aren't any daycare centers from 6 o'clock at night until 2 in the morning. And anyway, thank you. This is a very, very good report. Thanks.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. I appreciate your work on this as well. I need to get my head wrapped around kind of what our bottom lines are, because it's not simple, I get it. But should I conclude that the total population of 3 and 4-year-olds not currently in high-quality early learning experiences, preschool or some other kind of organized learning experience, that total number is 500, or it's larger than 500?
Mayor Bagley, Councilmember Waters, it's approximately 500 children in poverty, right? Of 3 and 4-year-olds.
So I was trying to get, like, what's the scope of the big number? Within the big number, we've got 500 kids who are least, whose families fall into a financial strata where they're unable to afford that. So we get an idea how to set those priorities. But what's the scope of the big problem? This is a target population of 500. And then, so all of those families are qualify for Head Start or or Medicaid or within or below the poverty level. Is that the case?
Correct.
So if a place to start was to assure that if the goal was all children who qualify by age, 3 and 4-year-olds, but are in families unable to pay the freight, my math was $290 a week by 9 months, or $290 a month. That was a month or a week. $290 was a month. Time 9 months was $2,610 is what I got.
Right.
Yeah, and then if I multiply that times 500, I got $1.3 million in terms of the total cost to have 500 kids in high-quality preschool programs 4 days a week. I mean, is that
For Councilmember Waters, for 4 days a week, that would look more like, right.
half-day programs 4 days a week?
Half-day
Yeah,
program
yeah,
is
yeah.
4 days a week.
So we're in the universe of all kids who are not in preschool in this community, 500 of that universe are kids whose families would have a difficult time covering the costs. And so it's just from a financial standpoint, given the cost right now, would take $1.3 million to cover those costs. The related question is, if we had $1.3 million, are there 500 seats available in high quality? And I don't mean just daycare, high quality early learning programs, call them preschools for now. Do we know that? Are there 500 available seats? Do we have that capacity?
No.
Mayor Bagley,
And I'm not trying to
Councilmember
I'm not trying
Waters,
to cook you on this.
What we know, right. What we know is that currently there is we do have a number from St. Marion Valley School District. There is 100. There are 58 openings. So 100 of those. So there are 51 openings in preschools in Longmont, just in St. Vrain. So we don't know openings across the board, but we know that there's at least 51
So,
in St.
but
Vrain.
we don't know if there are other for-profit or nonprofit private preschool providers. We don't know
Exactly.
if they have capacity. or how-
Exactly, and also to match up the Colorado Shines rating as well.
Yeah, I have questions about that as well. You know, the difference between a level 1 and 2 and a level 3 and 4, and what does it take to get a level 3 and 4, and along that continuum of 1 to 4, at what point are we seeing the kind of early childhood programming that embodies the best of what we know in preparing kids for school and for life? Kind of a separate question, just from the goal of numbers and finances, because options under those considerations, at some point in time, whether or not you're raising funds to enroll kids in preschool, or we're having to create other options, the Friends, Family, and Neighborhood Network, and how to optimize the PASO program, how to optimize those resources, and where to leverage our resources to increase the numbers of people in this community capable of providing quality early learning experiences, whether it's in a formal preschool or not. Yeah. So it's like, how do we get our heads around the targets, the costs, and then strategies for making certain we've achieved a goal?
And thank you. I was going to, 80% of what you just said was, no, what I was gonna say. I was like, oh, now I'm just kidding. I like what Dr. Waters said. But to me, along those same lines, if you look at the considerations on page 5, as we get ready for this next step, which is, in my mind, which would be inviting not daycare providers, but preschool level educational providers that may or may not have a daycare component. Inviting them into the room and asking them, what do we do, right? What are the options? You're the experts, tell us, and help us start formulating a plan. While I think it's a noble goal to be able to say, hey, look, let's take levels 1 and 2 to 3. That is a number that we can all congratulate and raise champagne and say, we did it, but it's really not changing anything. Meaning just because someone is graded a 2 and then the next day they're graded a 3 doesn't necessarily translate into the type of outcome, at least I envision. And in my mind, as I'm sitting here thinking, well, what do we do as a council to accomplish our goal, or at least start making headway on the goal? I would not, like, for example, increase Longmont's high quality care from 58% to 78%. I think we should do that, but I also think that is an artificial victory, because my definition is the most important number I heard in all this was there are 500 children aged 3 and 4 that literally have no preschool experience. And so I think our goal that's digestible, right, so that it's not out there in the ether and, we want to be the best, so we can get our hands on it. I mean, I personally think we should say, how do we find the 500? How do we provide high quality preschool education? And what do we do in order to find facilities? Because in talking at the Bright Eyes Coalition, my takeaway, I'm not an expert in this area, was we don't have enough funding and we do not have enough physical locations to put the children. And so we have 500 kids. How do we find them? How do we educate them? And what do we do to get the resources? Whether it be somebody writes a check for $1.3 million, assuming we can find all of them, or do we go to the senior center and say, hey, anybody here want to be trained to become a licensed daycare provider or a licensed preschool teacher? And now in your golden years, start to, educate our youth? I mean, there's got to be ways. Other than a checkbook, there is other capital in this community that I think we can tap into. But I personally think that the next step should be have that meeting with the local preschool providers and focus on those 500 kids. And if there's a child out there that is not in poverty and is not receiving preschool experiences, we just assume for the moment that either mom is taking care of that kid and, you know, teaching that child shapes and colors, or they have resources to get their child some type of education should they choose. But it's the 500 here that I think in 40 years, they're going to be the homeless individuals. They're going to be the people, you know, on minimum wage, not knowing how to get out of the poverty cycle. They're going to be the ones who are, you know, the people that right now that Karen Roney and Chief Butler are interacting with on a daily basis. So I think we start there. That would be a digestible or tangible goal for me. That's what I think. Mayor Pro Tem?
I do agree. I think we need a digestible goal for this city council to do this year that we can actually see some progress in. And I think there are plenty of community resources. I'm not sure I want to take on 3-year-olds, but
I got this, Mayor Pro Tem. This is my. Yeah, I got this.
I do want to point out, though, that in our packet, this is a wonderful time, as I said at the retreat, because we have a governor who's very, very interested in this and has been his whole life, and actually has an educational resource on the web, and is very passionate about full-day kindergarten, which is, if we get kids into preschool and then they've got a half day of kindergarten, that's not too helpful either. So on a statewide basis, we need to all urge everybody that we know to call their representatives and tell them how important it is. It's not just the governor's initiatives that we have here and the current legislation that we have. Part of the problem is also not just that we don't have the building space, but we don't have the teachers, because it is very, very difficult to deal with 3-year-olds. It's lovely, but it's also difficult. And people are trying to do this to make a living, and they do not make a good living. And so there is the proposed bill for income tax credit for early childhood educators, and expanded teacher cadet program, including early childhood education. That'll be really important to helping young people go into this as an actual career. And so if we support that as part of our legislative support, both on city council and as private individuals, and urge other people to do that. That will go some way toward getting us capacity, not just for buildings, but also for teachers.
Councilmember, sorry.
So Mayor Bagley, can I just make one comment or clarification?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, so you had mentioned about, you know, in essence, what's the big deal about increasing your rating as a provider from, you know, a 2 to a 3 to a 4? It is linked back to a level of reimbursement
Funding.
that those providers could get for the CCAP.
So that's a way to increase physical space.
Increase
for
capacity.
Relatively.
It's a capacity
that's good.
strategy.
Thank
So
you.
there are a variety of strategies. So that would be one. That would be the benefit of increasing your rating beyond yay.
And then
So
we could take then the 500. Well, some of those 500 are then in those they get paid or reimbursed to go to these new level 3 facilities, taking our goal from
have more-
500 down to 450.
They get a
or
greater
420.
reimbursement, right.
Okay, thank you
So
for
it's
that
all-
clarification.
it's all kind of-
So it's not just a yay. Let's okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, there is a purpose. See, thank you, Karen. Councilmember Peck.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. So listening to everybody, and I agree with Mayor Bagley that we should start with a 500 group, define them. So are we giving direction to staff? Are they coming away from this with direction as to what their next steps are going to be.
I was going to make a motion,
Okay.
if nobody else did, that was actually going to direct staff to arrange a mayor-council summit where we could invite the Bright Eyes Coalition as well as other preschool, high-quality preschool providers to a room, much like Dr. Waters did with the developers and the environmentalists when talking about Main Street and the river corridor, and just start asking, define the problem is here are 500 kids that are in poverty that do not have any preschool educational experiences. How do we identify them, and what do we do about it?
Mayor Bagley, I would also consider opening that up to level 1 and 2 providers, because I think that they
Perfect.
would have an
Yep.
idea of what they needed as well. And so open that up, and then also open it up to our friend, family, neighbor care partners to provide input as well. So just across the board.
That was going to be my suggested motion for direction towards staff, with the understanding that, you have you have the contact information for the people that are in that room, right? And you have a commitment, I think, at least from me, that I would help facilitate that and do what I need to use my positivity, organizer, adaptability skill set to help make that a success. Dr. Waters?
I don't know, is that a motion? First of all,
That was a motion.
then I'm going to
all right,
second the
thank you.
motion. I
was going to do it anyway.
But I want to add something.
Yeah.
And it's, we've talked more than once about the genius of the and. And Karen was making a point that it's 500 kids and increasing capacity. I would add one more and. It's a noble goal, it's a digestible goal, but having 500 more kids in preschool programs that don't meet the standard of quality, I would not want to deny kids a preschool experience in any case. But we're going to miss a huge opportunity if in this summit, at some point or along a continuum here of progress, we don't get clear and expect that providers are as clear or make us clear on what they think the standards to be for high quality early learning, right? And there's enough research here for us and for them to be really clear on what should define or what should be embedded, the kind of curriculum, right? And I know though that the research is embedded in curricula. I just want to make certain that moving forward, it's just not in any preschool slot. If we can avoid just any preschool slot, it's 500 kids in high quality experiences, which will be a game changer for those kids.
And so going to your comment, when we met with the Bright Eyes Coalition, the question came up and they actually had a slide as to, well, what do you call high quality preschool, right? And the way they define it, right or wrong, is there were 5 factors, but they pushed them into 5 or 4 of them. Number 1, workforce qualification and professional development. In other words, helping your teachers become better instructors. 2, family partnerships to provide that education. 3, the overall quality of the learning environment that is made available to the children. And then the leadership, management, and administration of whatever the curriculum and facility is. So I don't know if that is our definition, but
Here's the
that's
power-
the Colorado. That's the Colorado Department of
Here's
Education.
the genius of the and. And if you then push or unpack whatever they're doing with curricula, there's some things we should expect to see, and I'll just stop at that. I mean,
Agreed.
there's no secret about what those things are.
Agreed. Yeah. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I do think that you guys have something called the gold standard, something or other that does really outline curriculum for high-quality preschool and early learning experiences, and so that's obviously what we're talking about. But I have a suggestion for later on in this packet.
Get up there. No. What I mean is turn on the mic, but speak really up loud. So, John, is that it? That's all you wanted to say?
I'll wait until this is later on.
Okay, all right. So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded by everybody. But let's vote anyway. and let's get this organized. Do you want to say something, Harold?
The other and in this is we've got to take these numbers and try to figure out what the real target is and what we're dealing with, because there's so much duplication. When I started running scenarios, it went pretty big, and what we need to do is in that summit try to get information from folks, because we have different people keeping different numbers, and we're just trying to aggregate them to figure out what we think it is. We need to start getting hard information.
Let's get it on the calendar, and then once we have a deadline, which deadlines stimulate progress, we can start talking about exactly what we want to do at the summit, and then how we're going to extract information from the experts. Let's vote. All right, that passes unanimously. So, sorry to add that one more thing, but if we just organize it.
It's on the list.
All right, cool. All right, next, and then I guess my concern, I have an agenda, really, I promise, there's an agenda for tonight. Here it is. All right. Before we go on, I know that Mayor Pro Tem wanted to talk about something, and I was thinking when you turned off your mic, I'm like, I don't know when we're going to talk about it, but do you want to revisit this real quick and make that comment?
Yeah, I don't want to revisit what we've already decided. There's something in our packet about, under Children, Youth, and Families, they talk about the Reading League, and next they talk about the Mayor's Book Club. And you said the Mayor's Book Club does not work very well. It's broken. So I would suggest we consult with the Reading League about what we can do to fix the Mayor's Book Club, because they have suggested books, and they work on vocabulary, they work on all this stuff. But yes, we want to have books that kids want to read.
Right. I think that Olga and Karen are on top of tweaking Mayor's Book Club, but I think that's a great resource. So we'll just stay tuned for awesomeness, awesome ideas from Karen and Olga. All right, cool. Thank you very much, Christina. All right, anything else that you wanted to say? No? All right, let's move on then to our last study session item, which is the 2019 legislative bills recommended for city council position. Sandy Cedar, you are so animated tonight. Yes, thank you. So let's talk about the three bills that are currently on this little handout here.
Great, Mayor Bagley and members of council, Sandy Cedar, Assistant City Manager. There are three bills in front of you recommended for council position. I would like to remind you this is a study session, so if you'd like to take official position on these, you first need to suspend the rules of procedure to be able to take official action on them. The first one, 1086, plumbing inspections. Essentially right now we have qualified ICC inspectors that do these kinds of inspections, and what the state is proposing is that we have to have journeyman plumbers to do plumbing inspections. That's a lot of extra, we think, unnecessary training that needs to happen and would actually change the way the employment works for these kinds of positions. So we are opposing this as an unfunded mandate. The next one, House Bill 1137, about the teacher cadet program, really does speak to just what you were talking about. So this allows for high schoolers who are in that cadet program to also specialize in early care and education, and not just K through 12 education. So that supports your work plan, as you just explained. With all the early care pieces, the need for those teachers is really important, and this opens that up for those high schoolers. The next one, Senate Bill 19101, prerequisites for constructions of managed lanes. What this does is this prohibits the Department of Transportation, CDOT, from constructing and designing these managed lanes. They already have an awful lot of regulation around those. As you know, the only way we're going to get some transportation is if we are able to use managed lanes in the right way, and so putting additional restrictions on it does not help our transportation situation. Since that's a council work plan item, we would suggest that you oppose Senate Bill 19101.
I don't remember the exact council rule of procedure, but I actually moved that we suspend the specific rule of procedure that states that we cannot vote on, I guess we already have this evening, but yeah, we should have done that before, but we did it anyway, that prohibits us from voting but for regular session. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Let's vote. Councilmember Peck, I'm assuming you didn't want to argue about that? Okay. All right. Sure they are.
Mayor Bagley, I believe you were giving direction. This one is an official
Yeah,
position.
this is an official
and there's the
position, where the
difference.
others are just directing staff. Very, very big difference, Dr. Waters. All right, that passes unanimously. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, Lusanne, can we get all right, Mayor Pro Tem prerogative.
I move we approve these three. I would also suggest that if we look at page 47 of our packet, there are three additional bills that have to do with early childhood education that might be good to add on, if not this week, next week. Okay.
So the motion is that we accept staff's recommendation for each of these bills. Okay? All right, that's been seconded a couple times. Let's go ahead and vote. All right, that passes unanimously.
Thanks, Mayor.
Ms. Cedar, you were so effective and efficient. If only the other assistant city manager could do that. Hi, Sean. Welcome to the meeting. All right. Just kidding, Sean. All right. Let's go on to mayor and council comments. Councilmember Finley.
Thank you, Mayor Bagley. I should have said this when our Veterans Community Project people were here. There are several ways the community can donate to our Veterans Village. One is to go to the veteranscommunityproject.org. You can donate directly there. Any money that comes from these zip codes around here or from Colorado goes to this project. You can also donate at longmontcommunityfoundation.org. They have a drop-down where you can pick Veterans Village and you can donate there. But it's a great project. I encourage everyone to donate.
Dr. Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Bagley. Just following on the theme, Councilmember Finley, Chris Stout, and Kevin Molsheim, one of the developers involved, and has been a champion and really a driver of our thinking, a thought leader with respect to the Veterans Village. Has worked with Harold and really has been the tip of the spear here. The three of them are going to be part of a podcast interviewed to be hosted by the Longmont Observer. I know that's going to happen tomorrow. And there is a whole backstory on this, and you get a chance to tell that backstory with Chris and with Kevin. And I think it's an important story to tell in this community, so people understand, more about the background, where it's come from, where it's going, and what the implications are in the long run for the community and our veterans. So I'm just putting in a plug that people pay attention. It's coming, and I'm certain it's going to be a scintillating conversation and informative.
All right. City Manager, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
City Attorney, any remarks?
No comments, Mayor.
All right, then we're adjourned. Yeah, sure.